Hello, everybody. I thought I might read you a poem today, a poem by me, and actually a poem I wrote in Portuguese in sort of strange circumstances, really. If you know me, you probably know me. Most of my followers know me as, I think, a political and cultural commentator. I think a lot of you know that I'm a fiction writer too. Some of you know that. And one of my friends actually this week, Paul Kennedy, suggested that I read something of my own work. And I was going to read from my fiction, but for some reason remembered that I'd written this poem a few years ago. And I thought it might be interesting. I know most people are not interested in poetry. Even most literary people are not interested in poetry anymore, which is unfortunate, I think, though inevitable, because most poets have got so solipsistic and so disconnected from reality, they're not speaking to ordinary people anymore. But anyway, we'll see if anyone's interested in this or not. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Gary Craig Powell. I'm a fiction writer, the author of Stoning the Devil and Our Parent Who Art in Heaven. And I write the blog Write Dangerously, and now this podcast also called Write Dangerously. So the story of this poem really is that I belonged, no longer do, to a writing association in Ponte Lima, this little Portuguese town where I live. And they wanted to produce an anthology of poems about the River Lima, which is the river that runs through the town. And the president of the association, who's a very good poet and painter called Fernando Hilario, asked me to contribute to the anthology. He wanted me to write a poem. I said, I can't do that. And he said, yeah, you can. I really think you can. And it made me remember a Portuguese girlfriend I had a long time ago in Spain when I was young, who also once said to me, I want you to write a poem. And I remember saying, I can't write poems anymore. I had written poems when I was in my teens, but had given it up. Most of them were not very good. And I never forgot what she said, which was, anyone who can feel can write a poem, which I think is actually true and quite profound. So anyway, I went home, and for some reason, although I thought I couldn't write this poem, it had to be in Portuguese. Obviously, it was a Portuguese anthology. I just sat down, and it was one of those times when inspiration struck, and I came up with this poem called As Palavras-Peixes, which is, it doesn't make a lot of sense in Portuguese. It literally means the fish words, or the words that are fish, something like that. And it just came to me in a series of images, really. I didn't have to think about it really at all. It wasn't the product of reason at all. It came from deep in the unconscious. And anyway, I'm going to try and read it to you. And I'm assuming most of you are English speakers and won't know Portuguese. So I'm going to read my English translation of it first, which I think is not nearly as good as the original in Portuguese, which I'll try to read to you afterwards so you get the sound of it. It's about a fisherman who's fishing on the River Lima. And the way I saw it, this was a long time ago, perhaps in Celtic times, perhaps in Swabian times when the Swabians invaded the peninsula. after the fall of the Roman Empire, but a long time ago anyway. And the poet, the narrator, is fishing, and he's kind of imagining himself as a fish, and he's kind of imagining his words as fish in the river, if that makes any sense. Anyway, we'll see what you think of it. The fish words. Words slide through this warm, undulating water. My words that are silver-plated like fish, like eels. They flee from me, my blown-away words, my ill-thought thoughts, in this river which belongs to our mother, the drenched goddess. I fish and think and cease thinking. I cast my net from the boat, but in the summer heat, the words, which are myself, fisherman and sinner, these words clothed in steel scales with flexible spines, all flee from me, deserting me. The net is empty. My soul has fled. Where is it? On the riverbed, half asleep, or swimming with the current against the tide towards the wild, salty estuary. Could it be that this creature, enclosed in its silver armor, feels the mad, slippery desire to leave the fresh water of the river, like the lamprey who knows the imperative of swimming to the sea, the unknown sea? So I don't want to analyze it. I think, as Wordsworth said over 200 years ago, we murder to dissect, and literary analysis is mostly a waste of time. It's mostly a futile exercise. I think the images either resonate with you or they don't. I have my ideas about what the poem is about. I think some of the symbolism of fishing may be to do with Christianity. It's hard to avoid that connection in our Christian culture. As Jesus said, follow me and I will teach you to become fishers of men. I think also the plunge into the river is it's also a plunge into the subconscious, into the depths of the soul, and seeing one's words as fish, as eels, is seeing them as being alive and wild in a way. And I'll come back to that the wildness of the language in a minute. I think for anyone who's curious, and for any Portuguese listeners, I'll read the poem in Portuguese, so bear with me just for a couple of minutes if you're not a Portuguese speaker. I think Portuguese is quite an onomatopoeic language. It's a very susurrous language. You've got a lot of sh and j type sounds. We have a lot of sibilants in English as well, but I think the Portuguese really captures the sound of the river better than Portuguese. Sorry, better than English. As palavras-peixes deslizam nesta água ondulada e morna as palavras, as minhas palavras prateadas como peixes, como enguias. Fogem de mim as minhas palavras sopradas, os meus pensamentos mal pensados, neste rio que pertence à nossa mãe, a deusa ensopada. Pesco e penso e deixo de pensar. Lanço a minha rede do barco, mas no calor estival, as palavras que sou eu, pescador e pecador, estas palavras vestidas de escamas de ferro, com espinhas flexíveis, fogem todas, abandonando-me. A rede está vazia. A minha alma fugiu. Onde está? No leito do rio sonolenta ou nadando com a corrente contra a maré no sentido de foz salgada e turbulenta? Será que essa criatura encaixada na sua armadura de prata sente a vontade tonta, escorregadia de deixar a água doce do rio, como a lampreia que sente a necessidade de nadar até ao mar que desconhece? And that's the book, Rio Lima Poesia. I don't know if it's available anywhere now. So I don't know if any of you like that. I like to give book recommendations on these videos, and I've been reading Martin Shaw, who was a recommendation of a friend of mine at Daleth Hall. And this week I've read this book, Courting the Wild Twin by Martin Shaw, which is, well, I don't want to give too much of it away. Shaw is a mythologist, and he tells a couple of stories, and it's not clear to me actually whether they are folk tales or he's written them himself, but they're basically sort of Beauty and the Beast type tales in which terrifying beasts appear, but with patience and courage the humans confront these beasts and find that they're not so terrifying after all. And of course the deep wisdom in these tales is that we have to accept the darker parts of ourselves, what Jung called the shadow parts of ourselves. And if we don't, in fact, we get destroyed by them. And you've all heard this week, there's been a great deal of fuss about this new film, Wuthering Heights, which seems to be basically a sort of a smuttification of the novel, as far as I can guess. I've read quite a lot about it. This doesn't understand the book at all. The book is about Catherine's relationship with Heathcliff is really her relationship with her shadow. At one point in the book, she says something like, "I am Heathcliff. Heathcliff is me." This is not an erotic book at all. That's not the point of it. The point of it is that she has this deep identity with a wild and dangerous and often brutal part of her own nature, which she rejects. She goes for the safe, rich boring Englishman. And in rejecting the shadow side of herself, she ends up destroying herself and Heathcliff, and the repercussions go on into the next generation as well, again, as Carl Jung warned us. So what Shaw is saying is we need to welcome the wild part of ourselves. We need to listen to it. Not just look at it, but actually listen. And he suggests we go out into the wilderness. And, that's a good idea if you can do it. And you can, you have to make time. Yesterday I climbed a mountain near here, the Serra d'Arga. Usually when I go up there I don't meet anybody. But yesterday I did. I got to this little peak. It's not very high. It's only a couple of thousand feet up. And there was a young man on the top of it. And his phone was playing rap music. And North American rap. He was Portuguese, but he was listening to North American rap. And I thought, what a pity, that he was in this beautiful place and he could have been listening to what the mountain had to tell him, to what the wilderness had to tell him, to what the wind had to tell him. You could hear, we've had very heavy rain here, and there were waterfalls not far away, which you could hear, and there were birds. He wasn't listening to any of that. He was listening to this urban rapping over a beat that had been created by a computer. So although he was physically in the space, he was not mentally there. Mentally he was in Chicago or New York or somewhere. I don't know where he was actually, but he wasn't really there. So if I've got some advice to you, and I don't necessarily consider myself incredibly wise, but I have spent a fair amount of time in the wilderness. I do go into the mountains as often as I can. One piece of advice I can definitely give you is not to take any music with you. Doesn't matter how good it is, and it doesn't matter if it's rap, if it's Bad Bunny, or if it's the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or Frank Sinatra or Mozart. That's not what you're doing in the mountains, in the forests. What you're doing is listening to the universe. I mean, listen to your music by all means, but not while you're out in the wilderness. Let the wilderness speak to you. That's what my poem tries to do. Well, I think it does. I don't like it when people say, what's he trying to say in this poem? I think you're either saying something or you're not. I think I said something in the poem. And in the poem, I was listening to the song of the river. I was listening to the fish in the river. I was listening to my ancestors, my Celtic ancestors who lived and fished on this river and in rivers like it in Wales. And I was articulating what they felt as far as I could. So that's it from me today. Court the wild twin within yourself. Listen to the wild. Listen to your wild twin. You have one. And if you want to be free, you have to make friends with that wild twin, actually. So, my fellow free spirits, over men and over women, dangerous writers and artists, dangerous readers, live dangerously, write dangerously, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.